This is the picture that Ibra posted on his Instagram with the caption, "The calm before the storm," hinting at what's about to happen next week after the Euros end and the Mercato madness officially begins. As multiple reports suggest, Alvaro Morata of Milan is now a done deal, with his medicals apparently already scheduled for Tuesday or Wednesday. The next profile Milan's apparently going after, Youssouf Fofana. But are the fans feeling satisfied by these transfer moves? Because I've seen a few comments calling this management and ownership group a complete mess, and today's the day I'm gonna have to address this. And we'll take a look at the possibility of Strahinja Pavlovic being Milan's next defensive signing in today's episode of Rumor or Real. Now, I'll be honest, guys, seeing this picture of Ibrahimovic, this is the reason why I was churning out a video every 5-6 days, because during the Euros, the Mercato was very slow, but there's an anticipation, there's an expectation that next week onwards, when this tournament is over and we're closing in on the start of the new season, this market is likely to explode for Milan. I believe there are going to be about 3 to 4 signings minimum, and that's why we're going to see our more regular Mercato updates from next week onwards. And on a personal note, I rarely ever do this on this channel. I do want to thank you guys for taking this channel to 10,000 plus subscribers. The last time I felt like it was a milestone was pretty much when the channel had 100 subscribers. You don't really feel it as much at 1,000 or 2,000 or 3,000. But that 100 number mark feels like, okay, I'm getting somewhere with this. But this 10,000 number makes you feel fairly more legit. And I want to give a special thanks, a massive thanks to the channel members who've literally put their money where their mouth is. I want you guys to know I really, really appreciate you. And everybody and anybody who's subscribed to the channel and watched the videos, a massive thank you to you as well. And now from these happy, fuzzy sentiments, let's dive into something completely negative. And that is this particular comment. Now, naturally, you can see this comment is fairly aggressive, but there are some points in this comment that are a growing sentiment within the Milan fan base. I've seen a lot of people talk about how this club is a complete mess. This ownership is the worst thing that has happened to this team in years. And I think ignoring some of the more aggressive parts of this comment, we can touch up on the general sentiment of what this person is trying to say. Now, let me point out one thing. I love the criticism. I don't want this to become a community where everybody has to agree with each other. Really good ideas come out of complete disagreements. And I think this is why it became very important to address this particular comment, especially this particular part where they say Milan is a mess. Now, I'm not sure how many of you guys actually agree that the club is a mess. If you do agree that this is a mess, I honestly want to ask you where you guys were during the banter era, because that was an absolute mess. Finishing in 10th place, having Kevin Constant as your left back, that was a mess. We finished in 2nd place last season with a completely porous defense. This team is consistently making the Champions League. You're turning a profit for a 2nd year in a row. I know it's fun to share the memes of Ferlani holding up the calculator, but if you're above 17 years old and understand finances, you will see how there's long-term value to this club being financially sound. At this point in time, AC Milan was the only team, before Manchester United stepped in, Milan was the only Serie A club that had the affordability to be able to pay a release clause of 40 million for Joshua Zirkzee and not have to sell a player in return. And that, quite honestly, is a very unique position for this Milan team to be in, which hasn't had financial strength for almost 2 decades now. Now, is there an argument that where Milan is right now is maybe where they should not be? They should be better than where they are? Yes. And we can hold the management to account for that. There is something that can be said to them about what happened last season with Marcus Thuram's transfer. That deal should have been completed by Milan. I was crying last summer transfer window. 1 year ago, I was crying. We don't have enough center backs. We don't have enough central defensive midfielders. This team is going to struggle defensively. Why didn't the management take action on that? Can we hold them to account for that? For sure. Why did all the center forward profiles from last season, Thuram, Mehdi, Taremi, eventually all the other names that Milan was linked to, why did everyone slip through? These players, the central defensive midfielder, the center back, a higher quality center forward, they could have possibly kept Milan much closer to Inter or maybe even surpassed them. And I've called out the management for that. I've even taken flack for some Milan fans who said I was overreacting on what was happening with our defense, and the friendlies were not going to be a reflection of what was going to happen during the season. But I criticized the management for that, not to get a pat on the back from the Cardinale haters. I criticize the management because they deserve to be criticized for that. And that's what I think we have to do. We criticize them when they deserve it, but when they don't sign Joshua Zirkzee because of a 15 million commission amount, I'm not gonna criticize them for that. That's an insane commission percentage of over 30%. So you can call the club a complete mess as much as you want. It doesn't make it accurate. Milan is doing financially better than they have in almost 20 years. They're now consistently making top 4. They have players and profiles that are stars in the world of football. These are 3 things Stars, Champions League, good finances that this club hasn't seen consistently in 2 decades. So calling this equation a complete mess is nothing outside of a dramatic overreaction. And I understand it. There's a portion of Milan fans that have decided that because of what Cardinale did to Paolo Maldini, he's just gonna get hate and nothing else from them. But what they want is for everybody else to hate them too. Do I like what they did to Paolo? Not for a second, but this portion of the fan base, they want everybody to equally hate Cardinale. And everyone who doesn't match their over-the-top hate for Redbird or the owner, that person must be a Cardinale supporter. For me, the only responsibility I see is to judge the management on outcomes and results. I said last transfer window when Sandro Tonali was sold, hey, I know he's sold, I'm mad about it, but I'm gonna see what they do with these funds over the next 2 months. What they did was spend almost 100 million euros on good quality players like Pulisic, like Tiani Reinders. So this time around, I'm not gonna react again in 10 days of the transfer market opening up. I'm gonna wait till the end of August to see what this management does. But I'm not gonna match this over-the-top dramatization about how this team is a complete mess and these are the worst owners since Yong Hong Lee, because the facts and numbers show that's not even remotely true. And it's just the frustration boiling over in some fans' minds. And the first profile we're gonna look at is gonna be that of Alvaro Morata. It looks like that's gonna be the first signing Milan's gonna be making in this Mercato. There are reports that a contract has been agreed till 2028, a 3-year term. The report suggests that he's gonna be getting a salary of 5 million a year plus bonuses. Another report said a net salary of 4.5 million a year. This means that the guy is actually taking a pay cut from what he gets paid at Atletico Madrid. Alvaro Morata did come out in an interview and said that the appreciation that players get in Spain is not quite the same of what they get in Italy, which is why he was open to making a move back to Serie A. Milan will be paying that release clause that Atletico Madrid has. I've seen some differing figures. Some have said 12 million, some have said 13 million. The latest report said that Ibrahimovic has received a call from Morata giving his go-ahead. This means that after the final of the Euros on Sunday, Morata will be coming to Milan to sign his contract. He will complete his medical, which is reportedly scheduled for Tuesday or Wednesday, and the player will then go on a break on his vacation before the new season kicks off. Now let's take a note, in this particular decade, these are how many goals that Morata has scored every season. From 2019-20 onwards, 16 goals, 20 goals, 12 goals, 15 goals, 21 goals. So you're getting a player who's a consistent goal scorer. As pointed out by the Sempre Milan article, in the last 5 seasons, in the league itself, he scored 10 goals plus in 4 out of 5 seasons, whereas Joshua Zirkzee had 1 season last year where he scored 10 goals. Before that, he never hit the double digit in any of his seasons. Now, obviously, Zirkzee is 22, 23 years old, Morata is 31 years old, but why are we making a 31-year-old sound like they're 50? As long as he can run, which he can, as long as he can press, which he can do really well, and as long as he can score goals, which he clearly consistently does, what do we care if he's 31 years old? We're not trying to sell him life insurance. We can't just be focused on buying profiles and buying big name players that Fabrizio Romano is talking about. We have to focus on buying players that can fit a system that our coach is trying to create. I mean, do we not remember what happened with the Donnarumma situation? When he left Milan, at that point in time, his value was probably around 60 to 70 million euros. He was also demanding a salary well north of 10 million. And because we look at the fact that, oh, that player has such a high value and has such a high salary, he must be a good player, which he was. But that didn't mean that you couldn't find a different good player with maybe some different quality assets that can cost you less, but also get good value for your team. And in that case, what do we get? Mike Maignan. He came in for a payment, I believe, somewhere around 15 million euros. His salary, if I remember right, was 2.5 million euros. But look at his impact that he had on the team, because he had that experience playing at PSG. He had the experience playing at Lille. And in this case, we have to look at the experience that Morata brings. Because if you look at the numbers, with 21 goals last season, it was Alvaro Morata's best scoring record in his entire career. So naturally, this move is obviously stamped as real. And in my opinion, I'm actually really looking forward to this. The only caveat that I have is Milan must sign another attacker, another center forward. Because if we're just banking on Morata, Okafor, and Jovic, one injury to one of those players, this team can actually be in trouble. So this is a move I'm very happy about, as long as we make another attacking signing. And the next profile we're going to be looking at is that of Youssouf Fofana. Now, this is a player that I covered in the first Rumor Real episode. I wasn't sure if this move was going to happen, to be honest. And Matteo Moretto said in his latest tweet that Milan actually had given up on the player too. They believed that he's going to be moving to Premier League. Something changed, and now he wants to come to Serie A. He wants to come to Milan. It is being said that the club have found an agreement with the player player on personal terms. They still haven't struck up a deal with Monaco yet though. And I do wonder if his time during the Euros with players like Theo Hernandez, Mike Maignan, Olivier Giroud, seeing the transformation of Mike becoming the #1 goalkeeper, seeing the transformation of what Theo Hernandez turned into outside of the final match, what Theo Hernandez did throughout the entirety of the Euros. And I'm sure Olivier Giroud, who loved Milan, had positive things to say about the club. I wonder if that changed the player's mind, because the latest reports are saying that he wants this move. He wants to come to Milan. It's just about finding that agreement with Monaco. Now, they want a deal around the 25 million mark, whereas Milan, at this point in time, sorry to tell you, are lowballing them, making an offer on 12 to 15 million. I really hope that Milan doesn't move too slowly on this, because this is a profile. This is a player that the club can really use. I do think a deal might be found somewhere on that 20 million mark, as I had predicted almost a month ago now, and that could still happen. Now, Fabrizio Romano said that Monaco received an offer from Nottingham Forest for 30 million euros for the player that was rejected. I think Fofana is exactly the kind of profile that Milan should be looking at, and I do think that defensive signing, it will sort of release the responsibility, the defensive responsibilities that were put last season on Tiani Reinders. And I really do think that we'll see a much more better, a more dynamic, a more creative version of what Reinders can actually be. So this move doesn't just make Milan's central defensive department better, makes Milan's backline a little bit more stable, it also makes the creative players a little bit more free to actually create. For that reason, at this point in time, these reports are coming from very reputed sources. I'm gonna stamp this for sure as real. Milan must find an agreement on the price and get this deal over the line. And then there's a profile of the Serbian center back in Strahinja Pavlovic. This news suddenly exploded in the last 72 hours. Now, there was an article that came out about how Fonseca feels that, or Fonseca essentially wants to design Milan's backline, the defensive unit around Fikayo Tomori. Now, naturally, it became important to see, okay, who are we gonna be partnering up alongside Fikayo? Because if you look at the center backs that Milan has, you look at a player of the profile of Pierre Kalulu. Can Fonseca get the Kalulu we had 2 years ago? You surely hope so. But his most recent form, his consistent injury issues, makes him an unreliable profile. And then you look at somebody like Malik Tau, as I've talked about in a few videos now. A very good quality, exceeded expectation in his first season, but a pretty poor second season, was individually involved in making some pretty bad mistakes that directly led to outcomes of games. You know, you can make a mistake as a defender and your team still ends up outscoring and winning. But when you have multiple games where you make a mistake that allows the opposition to score on you and they end up winning the match, that usually gets magnified. And that happened to Malik Tau multiple times last season. And quite honestly, guys, at the beginning of last season, in the summer of 2023, if you had said to me that at the end of this season, Gabbia is going on loan to Villarreal, but at the end of this season, he will be the best partner to Fikayo, I would have seriously questioned your judgment. But at this point in time, it looks like Gabbia might actually be that profile that best fits with Fikayo Tomori based on most recent 6 months form. And just like I complained in the last summer mercato, I have to do it again. Fikayo Tomori and Gabbia, that's not a good enough pairing in my opinion for 3 different competitions if you want to succeed, which is where the profile of Strahinja Pavlovic comes in. Now, we know very little about Pavlovic. He comes from RB Salzburg. He was a former teammate of Noah Okafor, the same club that Okafor came from last summer. And the one thing constantly highlighted in the Sempre Milan articles is that this guy is an aerial monster, just like Nemanja Vidic. The guy made almost 40 appearances last season, scored goals, assisted goals in all competitions, including the Champions League. And the one part that we've consistently talked about for over a year now is that Milan wants to partner up Fikayo Tomori with a left-footed center back. And guess what? Pavlovic fits that profile. Now, Fabrizio Romano has tweeted about negotiations that are ongoing, but it is being said that Milan has a preference to first find an agreement with the player himself before they start communicating with RB Salzburg. His market value is set to be somewhere around that 25 million mark. He does have a contract till 2027, which means it would be hard to negotiate a deal down for this particular player. So at this point in time, when it comes to Pavlovic coming to Milan, I'm going to stamp this as possible. I do think the reports that were coming across with Matteo Moretto, Fabrizio Romano, it sounds like there is a negotiation ongoing. And then there's Tammy Abraham. Now, as I mentioned earlier, if Alvaro Morata is signed, I'm okay with that at that price tag. But Milan must make another signing in the attacking department. And one of the profiles, the most recently bubbling profiles, is that of Tammy Abraham. Now, is this the player that I was thinking of when I said we need to make a third attacking signing? Not really, but let's keep some things in mind. Abraham had a decent first season with Roma. He scored, what, 27 goals? 27 goals in 53 appearances. His second season was pretty much a nightmare. 53 appearances, 9 goals before he eventually got injured, I think in the final match day of the season. And that injury kept him out for pretty much the entire season in 2023-24. But what we do know is this. This is a young player, 26 years old, clearly has the ability to score in Serie A. 27 goals in your first season is not an easy feat to accomplish. And the other thing that kind of jumps about this player is that in his first season, he made 37 appearances in Serie A. In his second season, he made 38 appearances, played all the matches. Yes, eventually he got injured, but sounds like this is a player that you can definitely bank on in terms of his availability. And he also clearly has ability to score goals at the top level. Scored in Serie A. In his last 2 seasons with Chelsea, he had 18 goals in one season, 12 goals in the next. The biggest question mark, well, a couple of big question marks for this player. Was he a one-hit wonder in Serie A? There were teams just not able to figure him out in his first season, but when it came around to his second season, they were easily able to negate him. Or if this is a player that once fully fit, once again, will be able to hit those numbers. The second question mark around him is that injury issue. He had a major injury that left him out for 30 of the matches last season. And that's the second question mark. Will he actually get back to full strength? Right now, I think both of these question marks still exist. Now, the player's value is assessed somewhere around that 30 million mark. He does have a contract with Roma till 2026. Now, the one thing that made me think that, okay, maybe this could actually happen is the reported interest of Roma in Sevilla's Youssouf and Nesiri. The fact that Roma is interested in that striker makes me think that they do want to make a move away from Tammy Abraham. And I could kind of see Milan stepping in. The player has Serie A experience. They could get him for a discount. He's a young profile. So when it comes to these reports, I guess you'd have to say this is possible. The age, profile, possible discounted price because of the injury makes me think Milan might make this move. And another profile that Milan have been linked with is Niclas Fullkrug. Now, this is one of those profiles that I know is going to bother that fan base. The player is 31 years old. If Milan's already looking at Alvaro Morata at 31 years old, why would they consider Fullkrug as well? The natural expectation for the fan base is going to be a younger striker, more age-wise in line with Tammy Abraham, more goal-scoring-wise in line with somebody else. Fullkrug in his last season was involved in Borussia Dortmund's run to the Champions League final. He scored 15 goals. He also scored goals for Germany during the Euros. And you did notice Nagelsmann always threw him on as a substitute whenever he needed that X factor, somebody to get on and score a goal, which he actually did. And when it comes to this player's profile, he does have a contract with Dortmund till 2026. His market value is probably somewhere around 12 million euros. So when it comes to price tag and experience, this is fairly in line with the Alvaro Morata move. Now, do I think this could happen? I have some doubts, guys. If Morata is coming to Milan, I can't see them also signing Fullkrug. You really feel like it has to be one of the two profiles, not both. So at this point in time, I'm going to stamp this report as unlikely. And there you have it, Milanisti. Those are some of the profiles we want to take a look at today. The only thing I would say in closing is be a little bit more patient. Just calm down a little bit. You know, there was a saying that I read that said, when your emotions go up, your intelligence goes down. And some of the comments that I'm reading, the apocalyptic feeling around Milan's future, in my opinion, I don't even think it's remotely true, but I trust if you guys disagree with me, I will definitely see it in the comments. And as always from my side, Forza Milan, grazie mille, ciao tutti. This is the same coach that once walked into a Champions League press conference wearing the Mask of Zorro costume. But one of the biggest questions on the minds of Milan fans is, what are his tactics? What kind of systems does he play with? What kind of formation does he implement? So let's bring out the tactical board and dive right in.